The first story I wanted to talk about is about a guy named Joel Osteen. Now, I've talked about him on my main channel before, but there's some new information about this guy that recently came out. I'll give you a spoiler. A plumber in his church discovered hundreds of thousands of dollars hidden in the walls. This rabbit hole goes deep. So let's start out by talking about who Joel Osteen is. The guy is basically a televangelist and a self-help guru, maybe? He is kind of a law of attraction kind of person. If you're unfamiliar, the law of attraction is the idea that if you put positivity out into the world, or if you believe hard enough that you're going to have something, then you'll have it. You will get what you want. It's kind of a spiritual level kind of thing. I'll tell you what, why don't we just watch an interview by him so I can introduce you to him. This is from 2011. It's an interview with Piers Morgan. So let's give this a listen and see what old Joel Osteen has to say for himself.
One of the moral mazes for any preacher, I think, a Christian preacher in particular, is homosexuality. And there's been lots of coverage in the news recently, the Don't Ask, Don't Tell campaign, obviously. What is your view? Because it seems to have changed depending on the interview that I've read or seen. What is your view? Is homosexuality...
This is Joel Osteen on the right, by the way, and that's his wife on the left. The guy talking right now is Piers Morgan.
Is homosexuality a sin in your eyes?
Yes, I've always believed, Piers, the scripture shows that it's a sin.
No, not necessarily. There are basically 6 verses in the Bible total that talk about homosexuality at all, most of which are in the Old Testament, some of which are in the New Testament, but for every single scripture there is an argument that it wasn't really exactly talking about homosexuality, certainly not the way that we know it today. In contrast to that fact, there are endless numbers of scriptures that talk about loving your neighbor as yourself and not judging others lest you be judged yourself. Lots of stuff about that. Lots of stuff about leaving people alone, letting them live their lives, and letting them, have their own relationship with God, basically. It's just strange that televangelists and preachers more generally like to zero in on this one thing that was mentioned a total of 6 times out of, how many verses are there in the Bible? 15,000? Out of a total of 31,102 verses in the Bible. So out of 31,000 verses in the Bible, it was mentioned in 6 of them. And there's debate about whether or not those 6 verses are even talking about the same thing that we're talking about today. But I don't even want to get into it right now. I just want to point out the Bible is a pretext to assert moral beliefs that you already hold. The Bible doesn't make any moral declarations that it doesn't reverse a chapter later. So when you say something about your moral beliefs coming from the Bible, like I hate homosexuality or something like that, you're basically telling me who you are as a person. Nothing about the Bible, because you can justify loving your neighbor as yourself and not judging others from the Bible just as easily as you can justify hating homosexuality. Just as easy. Let's keep listening to Joel Osteen talk about this.
I've always believed, Piers, the scripture shows that it's a sin. But, I'm not one of those that are out there to bash homosexuals and tell them that they're terrible people and all that. I mean, there are other sins in the Bible, too.
Okay, so I just want to point out what he's saying here. That's nice. That's better than what some other preachers do, right? Like Kenneth Copeland, for example. He doesn't give a shit. He's more than happy to tell them that they're terrible people. But this guy says he's not going to tell them that they're terrible people, though he does believe that. So at least he's not saying it to their face, right? I mean, does that count in his favor? I don't know. You be the judge.
Sins in the Bible, too. I think sometimes the church, and I don't mean this critically, but we focus on one issue or 2 issues, and there's plenty of other ones. So I don't believe his homosexuality is God's best for a person's life. I mean, sin means to miss the mark. But I don't believe being prideful or being through Christ.
When you see civil partnerships being sanctioned, you think that's wrong? Presumably.
Well, yeah, I think it's wrong, but I'm not going to bash those people. I'm not going to be against those people. They're good people. I say it's wrong because that's what the scripture says.
No. The scripture doesn't really go down that path, not in the way that hate preachers like to make it look. The Bible can just as easily justify leaving people alone, loving your neighbor as yourself, and not judging others lest you be judged. You can justify that just as easily as hating homosexuals, quote unquote. But either way, this guy is obviously falling in line with traditional preachers, traditional televangelist fire and brimstone types, even though he has a different approach, even though he's more kind of love and peace and happiness and law of attraction kind of thing. He still kind of lines up with the others on those hard fire and brimstone issues. So don't let him fool you. He's essentially the same in a prettier package. So here's another clip from him. Same interview. Give this one a listen.
I mean, you make vast sums of money. I'm right in thinking, you think the church takes in $80 million a year, but all of that gets plowed back into the church.
Yeah, dude is filthy rich. Filthy rich. He has this mega church, of course, as I mentioned. He's on TV every day and everything else. And he makes just obscene amounts of money. What does the Bible say about something about a rich man getting into heaven? Camel, eye of the needle, something. It's in there. Someone finish that for me. But, you know, hate gay people. That's really the thing that we should be focused on. In his defense, he said we shouldn't be focused on that and that alone. The fact that the dude is rich, it seems to me like equally as big of a sin as he views homosexuality as being. Let's keep listening.
Takes in $80 million a year, but all of that gets plowed back into the church. Is that right?
That's correct.
But on the books which sell by the squillion, you keep all the cash.
Well, we give. We're big givers, I'll promise you that. But
takers as well?
Sure.
Keep some of it?
We do.
Would you have any problem
It's
ethically?
when you have to pay the light bill, you know.
Exactly, yeah. But I mean, you're like multi-millionaires, aren't you?
Well, we don't have any problem. I don't think God has any problem with you being blessed. It's where your heart is. Our heart was never just to go out and make money and let's...
That's interesting. This dude is making a justification for something the Bible pretty much condemns, right? Jesus even condemned it. It's easier for a camel to fit through the eye of a needle than a rich man to get into heaven. Jesus specifically condemns that. But he doesn't say a fucking word about being gay. Not one word. But this guy is sitting here justifying being rich and saying homosexuality is a sin. How about that shit? Isn't that interesting? When it affects them, suddenly they give a shit and they find some way to justify it to themselves and their audience. When it doesn't affect them, they don't care. Isn't that interesting? So that's who Joel Osteen is. Now, a couple years ago, I think in 2019 maybe, Kanye West, of all people, showed up to Joel Osteen's megachurch, televised of course, to give a message. Now, those videos have been taken down and copyright stricken and all that other shit. And I have copies of the videos on my computer, but I really don't want to play them because of copyrights, you know, with Kanye and all that other stuff. So I figured I would read through this Friendly Atheist article written by Hemant Mehta just to get an idea of what Kanye said. Like, these are direct quotes from the videos. So this is what Kanye had to say. This is Hemant Mehta speaking. Kanye says God is now speaking through him, so audience members need to shut the hell up. Now, this is Kanye. Quote, I go into these streams of consciousness when I'm talking, and when you're speaking in the middle of it, it distracts me. I really appreciate the support, but I would like for everybody to be completely silent so I can let God flow through me as I speak to you guys today. This is Hemant Mehta again. Kanye, unaware of what the word traffic means, says strip clubs are involved in trafficking because owners want to know how much traffic they had each day. This is Kanye. Quote, when I'm in California or when I'm in Las Vegas, they got posters up advertising, you know, trafficking. Because if there's an advertisement for that's advertising sex trafficking, because at the end of the night, when they close up, the manager says, how much traffic do we have? I think that's something called, is that an example of equivocation? I believe it is. Yeah. Equivocation is the use of ambiguous language to conceal the truth or to avoid committing oneself. Yeah, I guess I could call this an example of equivocation. Kanye is taking a word and applying a different meaning to it and using that in part of his argument. That is not what they mean when they say traffic. You get a lot of traffic at a Burger King drive-thru too, but you're not trafficking like that. This is Hemant Mehta again. Kanye, in desperate need of a dictionary, thinks alcohol is of the devil because it's called a spirit. This is Kanye. Quote, "We all end up participating in the devil's playground, whether it's the spirits that get advertised to us all the time. Alcohol is, they call it a spirit, so we get constant advertisement for spirits." Once again, good example of equivocation. Kanye probably thinks this is really clever. It's not. It's stupid. This is another quote from Kanye. "All of that arrogance and confidence and cockiness that y'all see me use before, God is now using for him." Here's another quote from Kanye. "It's like the devil stole all the good producers. The devil stole all the good musicians, all the good artists, all the good designers, all the good business people, and said, 'You got to come over here and work for me.' And now the trend, the shift, is going to change. Jesus has won the victory because now, I told you about my arrogance and cockiness already, now the greatest artist that God has ever created is now working for him." Yeah, Kanye turned to basically a Christian rap artist or whatever. He released a Christian album after that. The reason that he went to Joel Osteen's church, I guess, is because Kanye ostensibly has been watching televangelists all day, every day. He just sits down in front of the TV and watches them preach about Jesus. And I'm assuming one of them was Joel Osteen because he went to Osteen's church to reveal his new rap album. Obviously, Osteen signed off on this stuff, or Kanye wouldn't have been allowed to go in the first place, right? Osteen ostensibly stands behind Kanye and the things that he said on Osteen's church. That's a pretty big fucking deal. I mean, some of the shit Kanye said was real fucked up, too. So anyways, that's who Joel Osteen is. There was a news story a few years ago that's relevant to the next subject I wanted to touch on. This article was written in 2014, March 11th, 2014. This is on theatlantic.com. The title is, "Someone Stole $600,000 in Donations from Joel Osteen's megachurch." Lakewood Church, the Houston headquarters of celebrity pastor Joel Osteen's evangelical empire, alerted its congregants that as much as $600,000 in cash and checks were taken from the building over the weekend. According to an email from Lakewood, the theft is limited only to those funds contributed in the church services on Saturday, March 8th and Sunday, March 9th, 2014. Holy shit. $600,000 in 2 fucking days? My God. That church makes so much money. Holy Christ. How much money is that? Is on Saturday and Sunday. I'm assuming they only hold church services on the weekends, right? My God, dude. That's 600,000 times 52. It's like $31 million a year in donations. Holy mother. That is an ungodly amount of money, if you will. Jesus Christ. And it doesn't include donations made electronically either. My God, they make so much fucking money. A church employee discovered the theft on Monday morning. Pastors Joel and Victoria Osteen are well-known proponents of a modern version of the prosperity gospel, a theology that believes God blesses people with material success. Among evangelicals, it's a theologically controversial yet obviously appealing approach to Christianity. In the past, Osteen has defended his embrace of prosperity teachings by saying, "I believe that God's dream is that we be successful in our careers and that we be able to send our kids to college. I don't mean that everyone is going to be rich, and I preach a lot on blooming where you're planted, but I don't have the mindset that money is a bad thing." Yeah, prosperity gospel goes a little bit beyond, God blesses those who he loves or whatever. And it kind of goes into, if you plant a seed, if you donate, then God will bless you. That's one of the big controversies of prosperity gospel. Pastors tell their congregants that if they donate $1,000 every month, God will return it to them tenfold. It's their seed. That's what they say. That's a really scummy thing to do, honestly. And Joel Osteen is a proponent of it. I have a problem with that. Anyway, let's keep reading. Their church attracts about 38,000 people every weekend for its services, and quite a bit more people watching Osteen's sermons on television. His TV presence, along with his series of popular Christian self-help books, are what helped to make Lakewood arguably the most famous megachurch in the country. Holy mother of God. That is a lot of people. 38,000 people? Jesus fucking Christ, dude. That was the in-person donations that went missing, 600 grand. So you can assume each attendee that was physically there donated about $15 per person, roughly. And that would get you to about 600,000. Jesus, dude. I've never seen that much money in my life, and I probably never will. Police are investigating the alleged theft and haven't yet arrested anyone. Church members who passed on their credit card information to Lakewood over the weekend were advised to pay close attention to your accounts over the next several days and weeks and report any suspicious activity to your financial institution or credit card company immediately. Okay, so that's the story, right? This is 2014 when all this went down. There's been an update. This video came out just the other day. Give this a listen. This is on a news network in Houston where he's based.
Out to new details about a sizable theft at Lakewood. You may remember hundreds of thousands of dollars were stolen from a safe at the megachurch.
That was a big headline back in 2014, and now, all these years later, another bombshell. A plumber says that he found the money in a wall while he was doing work at the church.
Holy shit. A plumber found the money in the wall of the church. $600,000. What the fuck was it doing there? I'm wondering if Osteen got reimbursed for the money that was stolen through insurance. I had heard that that was the case. I don't know that to be true. If that was the case, I feel like we may have a motive and a means and an opportunity to apply to Mr. Joel Osteen here for taking the money and cramming it in the wall of his church. I don't know. Who fucking knows? Who knows? I find it absolutely fascinating, though, that somebody made off with $600,000 from their safe, something that only one or two people should have access to, right? I mean, at the absolute most, maybe 10 people have access to their church. Maybe. Let's be generous and say 10. Fuck it, 20. Let's say 20 people, right? Investigate all 20 of those people. Figure out exactly what they were doing at any given moment, who was at the church at the time, and all that other stuff, and you'll find your answer. Not all 38,000 attendees had keys to the safe. Only a few people had keys to it, and only a few people were there in the moment, even capable of taking it. This should be an open and shut case, right? Easy to figure out. Should be. So, who took the money? Why would somebody have taken the money, 600 grand, and just left it in the fucking wall of the church? This is not adding up.
This revelation came to light during a morning radio show.
Chris, it happened live on 100.3 The Bull. The radio show was simply asking people, have they ever found anything of value? But they never expected to hear from a man who says he discovered hundreds of envelopes full of checks and cash at Houston's Lakewood Church.
There was a loose toilet in the wall, and we removed the tile. Well, they removed the tile. Went to go remove the toilet. And I moved some insulation away, and about 500 envelopes fell out of the wall.
How long ago was it, I wonder? Because it's kind of being framed here like the guy was telling an old story of some crazy thing that happened to him. It doesn't necessarily imply that this just happened, right?
Envelopes full of cash and checks.
I went ahead and contacted the maintenance supervisor that was there, and I went ahead and turned it all in.
Wow, dude. Wow. That is fucking batty. Holy hell. What is going on at this church? Okay, so that brings us to our latest article, written by Hemant Mehta on the Friendly Atheist website. Title is, A Plumber Found Envelopes Full of Cash in the Walls of Joel Osteen's Megachurch. In 2014, at Joel Osteen's Lakewood Church in Texas, someone broke into a safe and stole roughly $600,000 in cash, checks, and envelopes containing credit card information. Yeah, the credit card information and the checks are probably useless because it would be traced back to the thief instantly. You can't cash those checks. I mean, what bank are you going to go to cash those things? It's not going to happen. The cash, though, that would be useful for a thief. Credit card information, again, would be useless because it'd be a quick way to get caught. And apparently none of that information was used. Let's keep reading. That money represented 1 weekend's worth of income. Jesus Christ. The church had insurance for this sort of thing, believe it or not, so they didn't miss out on the donations. How about that shit? There's your answer. The church had insurance, so they got all of the money back from insurance. But it remained an open question as to who took the money. No one was ever arrested in conjunction with the theft. There hasn't been an update in this case until now. Last month, apparently, a plumber was called to deal with a loose toilet in the church. After he removed the toilet and everything behind it, he made a startling discovery, as he explained to 100.3 The Bull morning radio host George Lindsay. Those 500 envelopes contained lots and lots of cash. How much? We're not told. If it's not the full $600,000, the remainder of the money is still missing. But law enforcement was called in to continue the investigation, and the church confirmed the discovery. Incidentally, when the money was stolen, there was a $25,000 reward for anyone with information that could lead to the arrest of a suspect. The unnamed plumber wouldn't be eligible for that reward anyway, since no one's been arrested, but Crime Stoppers of Houston said the window for tips is closed and no one will be getting any reward at this point. Aw, that's sad. Why? Why would they close the window? You have to wonder why someone would have gone through all the trouble to steal that much money, only to dump a large chunk of it in the church. Was it a church member? A staffer? Does Joel Osteen just keep his spare cash in Lakewood's walls like other people do in their mattresses? What if that cash isn't the money that was stolen in 2014? I want answers. Yeah, that's a good point. First of all, I just got to point out, like, this story is coming from just some radio caller, so it's kind of unverified. We don't know all this for a fact, for sure. It's just really on the nose. 600 grand goes missing, and then this guy calls in and says he discovered 600 grand like 7 years after the fact, after the insurance had already paid out and everything. I don't know. This whole story is just suspicious and fucking weird, and I would absolutely love to have some answers for this. My God, what a fucking cliffhanger. Well, I don't know. Maybe in a couple years we'll get more answers. Sadly, I have to say I doubt it, but it's an interesting story either way.